Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Scream Bloody Podcast. This is episode 5. I'm Will Feiner, and with me today are Mitch Pegg and guest Colton Deem of the bands Valdrin, Nogothula, and Lucis Absentia. Colton, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. We were trying to work on getting you on an episode for a little bit. I figured you would be a great person to have on. We all go back a few years, and you and Mitch have played together for a number of years as well. So I'm sure we have many things to talk about.
Yeah. Many topics.
Yeah, I wanted to first and foremost ask you about the newest of your musical projects, Nogothula. Do you care to tell us just a little bit about that band and what's going on with it?
Not much to talk about, really. Eric and I been, geez, I think we talked about doing some sort of just brain dead death metal thing for years, really, as a joke, and we just never did it. And yeah, we just happened to at the same time, like last year, like early last year, like what if we just got together and wrote a song an evening or something? And so that's just kind of how it started. It was just Eric and I, and farting around on the guitar and going back and forth, and yeah, and then got got an EP out, and then we're attempting to become a live project, and it's a work in progress, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, the EP Gore Vortex Ascension that had a pretty good response. Was that what you expected? Because it sounds like you guys had a little bit more of maybe a relaxed approach as far as the formation of the band, as opposed to some projects where there's a lot of time and thought, and you guys just kind of went off the cuff. So did it beat your expectations, or do you care to comment on that?
No, by far, really. I Yeah, wasn't really expecting anything. I just thought it was fun, and I liked the we just liked the music, and we were like, figured was like, well, we'll just put it out on cassette, and that's kind of a, I don't know, the whole analog thing is I guess coming back, and I just thought it'd be a fun gimmick to just in hand with, it's like, oh, just a old old school death metal type thing, and then just put it out on cassette and just leave it at that, and figured that maybe we get a handful from friends or something, and then that was kind of it. But yeah, it sold out in like a week, which was definitely not what we expected, and it got thrown on a lot of like death metal promotion YouTube sites, and was even on some podcasts, I guess, like people were bringing it up as a, like, this is a new thing that I'm checking out, and it's pretty cool. And yeah, so yeah, it in short, it did definitely exceed what we assumed was going to happen.
Death metal seems to be relatively hip at the moment, and especially Ohio. Has a lot of good things going on with death metal bands and shows and whatnot. So definitely is a good time to come out with something that's in a little more death metal as far as in the bands that you have played in. I don't know that you've ever been in a straight up death metal band before.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. No. No, it's just been, yeah, mainly, I guess, as of recent, it's just been like thrash, and then black metal. I guess sprinkles of death metal here and there, but it's never been like an actual full blown death metal thing.
Right. Well, this is kind of a nice segue for Mitch to get in the conversation too. Tell us a little bit about how you guys, where you're from, maybe like early musical projects, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, as we three all know, but to any listeners that aren't aware, Colton and I both started playing music together. Geez, I don't know how long ago now, 15 years or something. Small town, Edina. There wasn't a lot of music, kind of a blues country scene. And then I think my sophomore year, Colton came to the high school that we were at. And at the time, me and Cody were playing in a band, The Lake Effect, with Kelly Howerton. He wrote all the music. It was like cool blues, kind of punky, bluesy. I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of original poppy bluesy stuff. And when Colton showed up, he hadn't even played guitar yet, and so he kind of joined the small group that we had of dudes that just were a little bit left of center, I guess, for the area, like skateboarding. But we'd play basketball, video games all the time, and playing music. He started playing guitar all the time. Then he went off to school. His senior year, we didn't play music yet, and that school closed down. He moved back, and then we were just like, huh. There was nothing going on because Kelly, who had fronted Lake Effect, was also gone, and there was no real musical projects going on in town for even for me and Cody. We would play like a Renaissance rally or there were these little rallies at our school. We would play like 2 or 3 cover songs with some friends in town. So Colton came back and we said, dude, let's just do this. Let's start writing music and see what we can do. And we went through multiple iterations of like sound and the name of the bands. It was Haunting Kensington at first, and it was terrible. We recorded a 5-song EP called, wow, I actually can't remember the name of the EP. Colton, do you remember what that
I don't.
what it was called?
I do not.
Dang, I remember the track titles.
How did you guys land on that name for the first iteration of the band?
That was Mitch.
Yeah, I remember when I came up with it. It was just me being like nerdy, but not thinking about marketability whatsoever. But there's a video game called Medieval that I really like, and it kind of has this like Tim Burton-esque gothic horror sort of art style to it, and then the music is all very Danny Elfman inspired in the game. So it was a game I always really enjoyed. And there's a level in the game called Kensington, which is just like some area in London. And for whatever reason, I was so stuck on that because if you were to play the game and see the level and the music that's attributed to that level, it's just real spooky and cool. And so the word Kensington in my mind was always synonymous with that stage, and the kind of emotion that it invoked. So I was like, oh, and Haunting Kensington. Ooh, like it sounds spooky and neat. But then it's like, it's a mouthful. No one could ever remember the name whenever we would like go play somewhere.
It fit. It was it fit with what we were, I guess, trying to do, which was shit like pop punky alternative things.
Like
So
wannabe Green Day without
yeah.
like sounding anything like Green Day whatsoever. Yeah. That's how that name came about. But then, yeah, we played the entire time we were in Kirks or in Edina and then, or Missouri, I should say. I mean, man, I don't know. Colton, you could be pitching some of your memories.
How did you guys progress from Haunting Kensington to the Depths EP? Like, how would characterize that time span a little bit for me?
I don't even think it was purposeful, really. I think we just, as we progressed, as progressed as musicians and then like finding new bands to listen to and stuff, we just kind of naturally got heavier and more technical because Haunting Kensington went to the Harrowing, which was pretty much metalcore, and it was just like Trivium, Ascendancy, Fall of Ideals, type stuff, and other bands, around that time, just old early 2000s metalcore stuff.
And you guys did put out a demo with that band as
That
the
also
Harrowing.
probably didn't have a name, so I don't
I
remember what that was
believe that the
called.
CDR that I have of that release just says,
You still have that?
I think it's called Blood of the Sands, is what
Oh,
you
that sounds
guys.
about right.
Yeah.
You still have that?
Oh yeah, I still got it.
Oh,
Destroy
man.
it.
No,
Destroy it.
never.
That's insane that you still have that. Yeah, I mean, it was just, even that CD in itself was just kind of a stylistic mess because every song on there didn't sound like another one, or there'd be just bunches of songs where just like, this is what we were into at the time when we wrote these, and then here's another 3 songs that don't sound similar at all. So it was a weird thing. Like we were constantly, I guess, trying to outdo ourselves, and in turn we just didn't have direction or something. We just knew we just like fast, heavy, riffy stuff. And it just progressed from there. And so when it got to the Gamora to the depth stuff, it was more focused, I guess, because I like Mitch or I was like suggested like what if we played in E standard, because like at the time like Trivium and bands like Slayer, Metallica and stuff, they played in E standard, and that wasn't something that a lot of people were doing because it was all down tuned and chugga lugga core stuff. And I was like, what if we just let's try to be heavy in E standard, and um which I mean you can be. It's not difficult to do, but it's just I think it's just a weird unspoken rule for some reason with modern metal. It's just like you can't be heavy in E standard. It's like no, you can be. It's very doable, but yeah. So it was just that, and then trying to just write. I don't even know if we went out with the intention of being like a thrash esque band. It was just more of just trying to push ourselves, really, and it is what it is, really.
That's probably why it was so good, at the
Yeah,
time. And I know kind of blows some people away. That To the Depths EP is a great release from front to back. I know it's one of my favorites. I probably played it like 100 times when you guys first came out with it.
yeah. I mean, we were surprised by it too. I think because we wrote it, and we're like, yeah, this is cool. And then when I think we recorded the song To the Depths
Oh
first,
yeah.
and we listened to that so many times, we're just like, wow. I mean, it's not the best of recordings, like when you go back to it now, but at the time, especially with how our other shit sounded, it was it was like incredible. And we're like, wow, this is heavy and it's punchy, and I can't believe that we sound like this, and um yeah, it's weird to think back on that. It was
Your musical
like 10 years
evolution
ago.
seems to kind of encapsulate a little bit at that time period, kind of the evolution that all of us were having, like in that area. I know, as I can speak from, me or any of my friends that were into heavy music in Kirksville, like you said, growing up in that area, it's so centered around other styles of music. The music scene is, if a music scene even exists. And so
Yeah.
once we found out about heavy music, it was just like you were moving from one thing to the next because you're finding so much new cool stuff. And, so it's funny that you mentioned that because, I mean, obviously you guys were getting into all kinds of different music and it's all happening so fast that, I mean, how would you dial in as a new and growing musician? How would you know your sound, or,
Hmm.
you know, until you have time to find it. And you guys kind of did find that sound a little bit into the depths.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was more focused, definitely, in like a general sense of like you can listen to one song after the other, and it's like yes, that makes sense. But yeah, with everything else, haunting Kensington and the harrowing, it was a it was a bit of a mess because it was just all over the place. I mean, I guess I wouldn't consider it a bad. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just we were just doing what we were just I don't know. We were just cranking out what we naturally were cranking out.
Yeah, I almost think if you were to pull those up and like if anyone was to listen to those, it really is just a snapshot of us learning how to play our instruments. And then to Will's great point, we're discovering new music and incorporating that into like while we were going from we're literally like learning to crawl as songwriters and as players because we really weren't any good and knew nothing about recording or we didn't know we didn't know jack. We just wanted to play in a band. And
Yeah.
so it is just kind of like I think where what's typical, especially if you're in a larger scene where there's examples of how to do things and there's people that you can kind of take and influence from and get wisdom from on how to go about being in a band, which would probably just be you practice, you come up with a release that is somewhat cohesive, and then you go play it out, release it, a demo, etc. And by then your sound's established. Where we were just like writing a song, hey, this sounds cool. Write a song, hey, we like this too. Write a song, hey, this sounds kind of cool. And each one we're doing different things, even though it started out with just like power chords and for whatever reason, thinking there had to be a lead guitar part over every single thing that was going on instead of like, having both guitars do the same thing at the same time or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of, because there was no one to tell us like, hey, that's, what are you doing? you know, which is, fine. I would think that that's how, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with going about things that way, but in regards to growing, but I definitely think it can be confusing and hurt, marketability if you were to come out of the gate as a band and do things that way, just like write a bunch of songs that make no sense. And because then it's hard to maybe have an identity, right, as a band, because you don't really have that established sound. I don't know.
I would say that was pretty common for any of the metal bands that were in Missouri at the time that you guys were playing shows, around Blood of the Sands or To the Depths. Not a lot of bands that, newer bands anyways, that had a defined sound. Because again, you're pulling from all kinds of different influences and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think For the Sake of Martyrs kind of had a cohesive sound, I suppose, right? They were just like, I don't know who they sound like because I didn't listen to that kind of music a lot. They were also from Columbia, which I think, or Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia.
So it had like some semblance of a music scene there, right?
Yeah, no, there's that scene was filled with bands like that. I don't even
Deathcore,
know.
metalcore.
I think they would fall, I guess, into the metalcore thing. I don't know what they sounded like. I don't, I'm
You don't
not
remember?
familiar with that stuff.
At that time, I remember metalcore being way bigger than deathcore, at least in that
Yeah,
area, because you had a lot of bands that wanted to hold on to the clean singing and,
that's true. Yeah.
so it's funny you bring up the journal printing building.
Oh yeah, that was a wow.
That was the first show we ever did together, actually.
With so was it? Was it Cancel the Search Party, Harrowing, For the Sake of Martyrs? Was that it? Was that it? Was that the bill?
I'm really struggling to remember. I feel like
That,
there was another band that came with For the Sake of Martyrs,
Oh
but
wait,
I can't remember their name now.
is that the flyer? Is that the flyer that's out there? I have handbills.
yeah, that's the one with I think it's the photo of Cancel the Search Party.
Yeah, up against a
Yeah,
brick
I
wall,
think there was
and
only 3 bands, right?
I'm pretty sure.
That might have been the case.
Dang it! Now I want to find it. I have those handbills somewhere, black and white.
If this, I remember renting that room for like $400, and I think we charged like five
Oh
bucks at
my
the door.
god.
Oh,
You
dude.
know what I
I did
mean?
not
Like,
know
Yeah.
that.
oh, dude, yeah. I mean, that was the point where we were just so wanting to play the music and for
Yeah.
our friends that it really didn't matter. Like, dude, I was 20 years old. I worked a full-time job. I'm like, $400, whatever. We get to play a show.
What was that? Was it Kimball's? Was that what the place was called? Where there were shows held sometimes? It was like a fraternity building or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the Shack, the last few places that we did some shows?
No, not where we played. I remember whenever I was still like 16, like we weren't even playing music yet. Me and Colton weren't, or nor were you. Like none of our bands were even established. And I remember there was whenever like Please 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 and With Love and some of that era of Kirksville high school college music, indie music, I guess, was going on. I swear there was this like building and it was on a hill and I thought it was called Kimball's or something, where there were shows that were held.
That would have probably been a little bit before my time. When I was in high school, first going to any shows, the only places that I remember catching anything really was in the Journal building and then also at Leisure World.
Oh yeah, that's right. Leisure World. I think Left Hand Black, that was one of their
Uh,
their stomping grounds.
I mean, those were pretty much the only two. The Journal printing building, those people didn't care what you rented that for because as long as you paid your money, that's all they cared about. Leisure
Yeah.
World was really the only like bar or venue, even type of place that was cool with having like metal bands and stuff. Because I
Yeah.
think like at that time, even like if you just said metal, they probably assumed it was like AC/DC. Like the only show that I ever booked there was the last Cancel the Search Party show. And I remember the bartender was pissed off at us at the end of the night because there was people like jumping off of bar tables. They threw beer in the middle of the mosh pit to slip and slide on.
At Leisure
Uh,
World.
yeah, at Leisure World in that back bar. Yeah. it got pretty tore up. They didn't like destroy anything or anything, but yeah, I just remember the bartender being, I mean, and I was like, well, did you make money?
Yeah, yeah, but they're used to things being quiet over there. I think that's, or maybe they just didn't like the
It
music.
definitely wasn't like an AC/DC cover band crowd.
Yeah,
It was like Tony Stiltner and Tom Crow and all that crew that, just
all the skater dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wanted to smack stuff. But yeah, so you guys wound up. That was actually right around that time that Cancel the Search Party played their last show. You guys had just moved out to Ohio a couple of months previous. So
Okay.
then I guess since we're on the Lucis Absentia track and you guys playing together, we'll go ahead and stay with that here for a second. Why don't you guys maybe weigh in on the move a little bit, and then the name change and Cincinnati.
Oh wow. That's a lot of info.
I mean, you can do it as short or long as you want, but just so that we don't talk about only like a few, because obviously we're just getting to like some of the good stuff
Yeah.
for Gamora and Lucis Absentia.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to get my dates right here. So what? 2013, 2012. It was 2012. We moved out to Cincinnati and we took jobs at like a manufacturing plant. All of us, me, Cody, Colton, and John Ritchie, who was playing bass for us at the time, which is really funny because we didn't have like. Actually, this is a pretty important detail. It was like we were in Edina and we were playing as the Harrowing, and at the time Mitch Basone was playing bass for us, and we were like, well, we're going to move to Cincy. Was a grown up, so he was actually on a path and had responsibilities and a plan and everything. So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. We're like, okay, that's cool. And so we had no bass player, and we're like, we're going to go to Cincinnati and write a bunch of music and see what we can do. And so John Ritchie, we were just like, "Hey, John, do you want to move to Cincinnati and play bass in our band?" And he was just like, "Sure,"
He
because he
just said,
was,
"Yep."
yeah. And so John just packed up and moved with us and to come out and play bass. It's just so funny in retrospect. It was awesome though. And so we got out here and spent maybe a year and a half writing and practicing and working like 50 to 60-hour weeks. Gosh, and I can't remember when our first show actually. Oh no, it would have been like at some point Cody and John quit where we were working at John Morrell, and then Colton had quit, and they met the Vermint dudes at Kroger. They started working at Kroger and met them. I can't remember if we had recorded the EP or not at this point though.
I don't think so.
So met them and we just I guess that was the beginning of the networking like in the area. So we spent like a year and a half with very little interaction with anybody out here except for like Alex Wool, who was in Endeavor Never Dies, and we and actually his had a more recent band, Claire Sentient.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we had met him through Justin Seacrest, and this was literally because we went to a guitar center. We were buying gear, and Justin was like, "Oh, hey, that stuff sounds cool," and we were like, "Oh, right on, you're a cool dude." And we ended up hanging out with him, and then we met Alex, and then through Alex, that's how we met Rob Riemann, who ended up recording our EP for us, To the Depths, actually. And Rob was also he was connected with those guys. He was in a pretty big band back in the day called Milkweed. Gosh, it's trying to remember the chain of events. I guess the big ones are like, yeah, moved, wrote, released the EP, met the Vermint dudes, started hanging with them, got a band space in the same building as them, and then we started playing shows out all the time. And that's when we kind of started to connect with all these other all the other local bands at the time that were kind of starting to do stuff or had just started doing things like Killing Session, Uncured, Split the Abyss, Winter Hymn. Oh man, I mean that's the ones we played with at Fenrir. Those bands that like right off the top of my head that we were playing like every other weekend. It felt like shows with those dudes. And at that time we were Gamora, and then oh, I can't remember specifically when we did the name change. 2016
It was
maybe.
2016, like the beginning of 2016, because we were about to, or maybe it was a couple of months before that, because we did it before the tour thing, which was in February of
Oh,
2016.
yeah, that's right. Okay.
But I don't remember exactly when.
Yeah, and it was all because we were going to get a some form of distribution, but the company that was going to do the distribution, there was another Gamora, I guess, like in Colorado or something, and so they were concerned about like a marketing clash, or just something happening there with both bands having the same name. In retrospect, it's like I don't think that band ended up doing a whole lot. Regardless, we were like, oh well, I think that like I had kind of pushed or at least mentioned Lucis, which I don't even know if it's the proper pronunciation of what it's supposed to mean.
I
There was a
don't think
dude
it
that said,
is, but
yeah, it's
fine. It's
supposed to mean
fine.
like absence of light. Like, oh, that sounds kind of brutal. That sounds kind of cool. Yeah, sounds like rad. Let's do it. And then at a show, a guy's like, actually, I know like Latin. It's supposed to be Lux Absentia, like Lux. And we're like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Lucis sounds cool since that's what everybody would always call us instead of the full name. So yeah. And then we re-released To the Depths at that time, and we had been writing the full length for a long time since Depths was released in 2013 originally. And then at the time it felt like forever, but in hindsight, I mean, To the Depths came out in 2013, was re-released in 2016, and then we put out Gehenna Gate in 2018. I mean, so that's
Yeah, it's not that bad.
no, it just felt like it at the time because we
Yeah.
were just playing all the time.
Well, and you guys were playing new songs off of Gehenna Gate, I mean, in advance
Yeah.
of 2 years before the album even came out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were playing the same set for 5 years straight or anything like that.
True.
But yeah, so I guess take us up to Gehenna Gate a little bit, the formation of that album, the writing, and putting it out.
I'm just thinking because we were playing at the band space all the time. The writing of it was kind of handled similarly to the depths, although I think part of why it took so much longer is because with To the Depths we were social recluses, so all we did was work and play music at home. Where when we were writing Gehenna, I mean, it typically would be we weren't really recording demos a whole lot. I think towards the end, Colton was, but the primary way we would go about writing would be during the week when we didn't have band practices. Colton and myself, whether we would meet up sometimes and share riff ideas, just him and I, or we were always practicing a lot on our own time. And when we were doing that, we would be coming up with riffs. And I actually was living with Cody for a spell, so there were times where I'd be able to take him downstairs, be like, hop on the drums, and I would show him some of the riffs I had made, and he would come up with drum parts, and then we would take those to practice. But this was before we got the band space. And so once we got the band space and his drums moved there and all of our gear moved there, the usual cadence of writing was practice on our own time, come up with, practice the songs we have, any songs that aren't complete, because we had a lot of them. It was usually like a song is all the way done, but we're like, there's a couple parts that we might want to alter or change. There were some where there were placeholder riffs in the middle of a track, or we would get to a certain point, like Devoid of Light, for example, and I Ethereal, both of those tracks actually off that album. We'd gotten like the first half written, and we had Devoid of Light all the way back in, I think, it might have been 2013, 2014. Whenever we had we still had the beginnings of that, and we had tried multiple we would have like a whole section of a song and then just decide, let's scrap it, and we'd move on. But I guess that was kind of the cadence, was work on our own time, meet up at band practice, all of us would learn the new parts, we would run through the songs, we would get to a point where we needed a new riff or something, and we would just kind of stop and be like, well, let's try this, and we would do the placeholder thing. Colton would you know just do some kind of thrashy riff. Cody would find a drum beat. If we didn't like it, we would keep shifting around. If we did like it, we would hold it and then come up with a more defined riff later to fit that spot. So it was like pretty collaborative for the most part on most of the tracks. There were just a handful that, and this was, all happening over the course of 2013 to probably, I think it was, most of the songs were written by the end of 2017, because we started recording and demoing around 2016 or 17. Gosh, I can't remember specifically. Colton's memory might be stronger
No, you're doing a lot better than I would be.
than mine in that respect.
It sounds like your guys' writing process had matured a great deal within a span of just like a few years. as opposed to, say even, writing for To the Depths or the earlier stuff.
Yeah, well, I think it
I mean,
helped
yes
when.
and no. I mean, it was kind of the same process for the longest time. We would just play on our own time with no real structure. It would just be farting around on the guitar until we're just like, that sounds kind of cool, and then we would just show it to each other and maybe play with it a little bit and change some things, and then show it to Cody and try to make it work in a song. Yeah, there wasn't really any structure to how we did things. It was just we would just play on our own time and then try to make it work in practice.
Yeah,
It wasn't until, like Mitch said, like way later where I started attempting to use programs and stuff to make demos to see if things actually worked cohesively and transitioned well. And
Hmm.
now that's more of what I do nowadays, and less the other. But yeah, like even like towards the end of Gehenna writing stuff, it was mainly kind of the same thing that we did for the longest time, and that was just lots of trial and error and lots of practicing with each other and going back and forth on ideas and stuff until something eventually stuck.
yeah, and I actually it just came to me one of the only, I guess, evolutions in the writing from the harrowing and I think a little bit the To the Depth stuff we weren't doing as much was Cody's contributions were initially kind of more just here's the riffs, write something over it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then and me because me and Colton would play just him and I a lot, where we'd have guitar parts and we'd be figuring out harmonies, or we would just be saying like, check out this riff because we weren't recording anything, so everything we did was with a guitar in our hands plugged into a practice amp, and so that's how it was handled for a long time. We would iron out the guitar parts heavily and then take it to Cody and be like, hey, here it is, like, play a thrash beat over this part, and then as time went on though, and we got into that writing of Gehenna, I mean, and there he did have contributions on To the Depths where he would come up with ideas. The specifics elude me because that all happened over such a short period of time. I know on Gehenna there were a lot of moments where, like I said, we'd get to a point where we don't know what to do, and Cody would throw a drum beat out there, or he would do the whole like make a guitar sound with his mouth of like what he thinks the guitar is supposed to do, and then we would try to come up with that. And it was really cool because we'd get stumped and then try different things, and sometimes it would spark something really cool, sometimes it would take us in a direction that we would like initially and not be fully sure of, and then we would just kind of decide, this just isn't, this kind of sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, and then we would scrap it and come up with something new.
For kind of a trial and error type of writing process, sounds very time intensive,
Yeah.
because it's not like
it
obviously you're
it
scrapping
was.
more than you keep, and I'm sure that was kind of laborious in a sense, but also, I mean, to me, that says that you guys really enjoyed playing together, to be in the room together for that many hours, just bouncing things off each other.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, cool. So when did you guys actually release Gehenna Gate?
Uh, it's a good question. It's a good question. Let me look it up because I don't remember.
August 2018, I think, digitally.
Yeah, I don't remember. I want to say that that sounds about right. It was August 18th, maybe. Let me see. Nope, I was wrong. 25th. August 25th.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Because that was just about a month after the last show that Mitch played with the band before he moved.
Correct. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So that was about the last time that Lucis was active together as far as a live lineup.
Yeah, other than
With the show a year later, I think.
yeah, 1 year later, where it came out.
2019, the reunion show. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Good times.
So Colton, we've talked about two of your bands. Then, so Valdrin is probably the band that you are obviously most active with at the moment.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
things may turn up with Nogothula as well. But tell us, I guess, just for the listeners, tell us about getting into Valdrin and what that's been like for you.
All right. Well, in the sense of getting into Valdrin, the music, I remember we played a show with them in, I don't even remember, 2014 maybe, and I think it was at Tap Outs. I don't know if do you remember Tap Outs? It was before it looked the way it did though. It looked worse. And the stage was like in the corner and stuff, and I think it was Gamora, Killing Session, Verment, Doom Planet Earth, which I didn't know at the time, but apparently like Ryan was playing drums in that, and I didn't know that. Which I think they had one show and then they just broke up. I don't know what happened, but and then Valdrin, and I don't remember really the details of that show at all, other than remember playing. And then when Valdrin got on stage, I remember being really confused because the stuff they were playing was, I'm like, okay, it's like, you know, it's like melodic black metal stuff. But I was trying to figure out where the synth sound was coming from. And I'm like, are they playing to a backing track? Like, what's happening? I didn't know that guitar pedals existed that could make synth sounds that didn't sound like ass. And so I remember I bought a CD. Remember talking to Carter a little bit about his GR20 pedal that he'd played through a Roland keyboard cabinet. So his guitar has like two setups. It has like the regular guitar setup that he plays through his amp, and then it has a synth access plug that goes through his pedal through another cabinet, and that's how the synth. So he plays all the synth stuff with his guitar, which is insane. I remember buying Beyond the Forest, listening to it on my Toshiba laptop, which sounds like butt. And I remember hearing the intro, and I'm like, okay, yeah, the intro is cool. And I was expecting like the normal local band thing, where it's just like, hey, the acoustic stuff sounds cool, the MIDI stuff sounds cool, all the sampled stuff sounds cool. And then once it hit the actual like quality of the instruments, I was expecting like the quality to just dip. And I'm like, all right, it's building up. It's going to go into the first actual music track, and it's going to sound like balls. And it didn't. And it blew me away. And just listening to Beyond the Forest, like the track and then the entire album as a whole, I was like, this is insane. Like, how did they come up with this stuff? And it was just mind boggling. And yeah, so a big fan of that for a while. And then I want to say like maybe the following year, because they started playing out like newer material, like they were playing Junna Talks and Funeral Tides from the Tucarian Talismans album out, and remember talking to Carter a little bit about, because they used to be a 4-piece, but I only saw them as a 3-piece and stuff, and I was like, there's a lot of stuff on the Beyond the Forest album that isn't, replicated live. If you guys need another guitar player, I'd totally be down to do that. And I bugged him about it every now and then. And then I think it was going into 2016 at a New Year's party. I was very intoxicated, and I don't really remember talking to him, but pretty much drunk me was just like, I really like what you're doing. I like the story within the lyrics, and I like the music, and I want to be a part of it. And then he just, like, a couple months went by, and he just actually hit me up one day asking if I, would want to try and learn the stuff. And so yeah, I obviously I took him up on that, and I learned the first two songs I learned were, I think it was "Come Forth" and "Junna Talks," and then I just tried really hard to try and learn everything else like within a small amount of time, because I was like really just driven to want to be a part of this project. And yeah, so that just eventually happened, and they let me in, and I think I was technically in the band for like several months, but I don't think it was made official until like way later. But that that's fine. It's not a big deal. And yeah, I mean, the rest is history and stuff. They've released Tucarian Talismans, and then they released an album with that I actually got to write a good amount on, and played many 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 shows. And
What was the first show that you played with Valdrin?
oh god, I think it was a Monday. It was a Monday at backstage, and they picked a Monday show. I don't know who put it on. It might have been Sai. It could have been somebody else, but they picked a Monday because they were like, well, there's not going to be a lot of people there because it's Monday and nobody's going to care, and
I remember
that way
this.
you can at least get your feet wet and stuff. And there was a ton of people there, which was horrifying, and they kept telling everybody that their guitar player wasn't there yet because he was flying in from Japan, but he'll be there for the set. And nobody, yeah, it was ridiculous. And then right before they were supposed to get on stage, that's when I started pulling stuff out of my car and walking upstage, like up to the stage. And there were like multiple people that they just saw that and they were like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." It wasn't even like a big deal. They're like, "Yeah, that's fine. I get that." And then yeah, I played my first set with them. I think we opened with Beyond the Forest. Oh god, we played a lot of stuff. Beyond the Forest. I want to say Serpent Willow, Come Forth, Vortex.
And this would have been early 2017. Is that correct?
No, when would that have been? 2016, maybe. I want to say in like
That sounds
maybe
right. Because
in June or something.
we were still living together at Arbor Point. Because we
Yeah,
might have just shifted. Because I remember you practicing all the time when you were just learning the songs. And so I don't know how long you said you
yeah.
were practicing before you played a show, but
I want to say that it wasn't very long because I want to say, oh god, like when I first started, I think it was like I was practicing for a couple weeks, and then they were like, "Oh, we got a show in June. Here's the set," and I hadn't even learned like 3 of the songs in the set, and BTF was one of them. So I had to learn a 10-minute song in 2 weeks. So yeah, that was just a lot of me sitting there and trying to get it right, and then going over to Carter's and being like, "Am I doing this right?" And yeah, so there was that, and then I want to say like there was another show after that, not that long after.
Was it Blood of the Wolf?
No, no, that was the following year, I think. It was Venom Inc. when they were supposed to play at Thompson, and then something happened, and they
oh
weren't able to play
yeah,
at Thompson, so
that
they
was a
played at
big show,
Madison.
dude. That was massive.
Yeah, and so it's just like, oh, for your second show, we're opening for Venom, and I'm like, okay, great. So yeah, that was stuff. Like that was cool. So that was pretty much my first thing. I played like 2 shows within the first like 6 weeks or something of learning things, and then from there it was learning all the two Carrion Talismans material while they were finishing up recording it, which I think, or it was before they were recording it. So I think they started recording it in fall of that year. So September, October is when they started recording two Carrion Talismans. And then yeah, then the following year was yeah Blood of the Wolf, and then yeah,
And since then, Effigy of Nightmares, and you guys,
yes.
Valdrin has played many shows around the tri-state area since then. You'll be going on your first tour with the band coming up here later next month, correct?
Yes, yeah, we're doing a little I don't remember, 5 or 6 shows with Well of Night. Yeah, hitting Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Washington, Brooklyn, and Youngstown. I think it was 5 shows. Just trying to get the feet wet a little bit, before just trying to push Effigy out, a little bit more than we got to because it dropped like right after COVID. So
Right.
we weren't able to really push that as much as we wanted to, but it still did surprisingly like super duper well, which is amazing. And yeah, trying to just push it out a little bit more before we jump into the next installment of things.
I'm glad you guys are going to get to push that album a little bit. It's fantastic, and I know you guys have been champing at the bit to get out and play some more shows around it and whatnot.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm excited.
So now that you've been on multiple albums and lots of shows with them, and obviously you've played with Lucis and whatnot, maybe compare and contrast what you like about like the different, maybe like writing or playing styles of the bands.
Oh, I mean, they're all vastly different, which is, I think, the best part of it. Like, I would say that there are similarities with Lucis and Valdrin in certain senses. Like, a lot of the open chord, like pick stuff, is very similar to some of the stuff that Valdrin uses. There is like a technical aspect. I think the best way that I described it was Lucis was definitely a lot more right hand and a lot more intricacy, and Valdrin was a lot more left hand and less right. So I guess there's a lot more, like weird chords and a lot more. Lucis is faster. That's pretty much what I'm getting at. It's faster and like slightly more technical in a different way than Valdrin is.
Right.
So, but I mean, I like both, and I would say that they're similar in the sense of they're both atmospheric when it needs to be atmospheric, and I think they're similar also in the sense of like how every song kind of there isn't like a straight. I don't know how to describe it very much. The songs aren't super straightforward, and they're very like dynamic. There's all constant up and downs and constant shifts. So in those senses, I think they're similar but different in the same sense. Like they don't do the same thing. Like Valdrin's more evil and like medieval, and I don't even know like how to describe it, but
You bring up an interesting point, though, I think, which is that, even though, like, obviously if you listen to Valdrin or Lucis, you're going to be able to hear some influences in there. I don't know that I've ever heard a band that really sounds like either of those bands. And I know you can say that
yeah,
about
exactly.
lots of bands, but, it definitely, as far as playing in both of them, you've probably had to have a pretty diverse approach. I'm sure, like, getting into Valdrin, you were talking about that a little bit ago,
Hmm.
about having to bounce so much off Carter, and whatnot, as far as getting the songs down. Because it's just such a different style than you had
Oh
probably
yeah,
spent any time playing prior to being in the band, or at least, attempting to try and get a spot in the band.
yeah. No, he's a fantastic musician. Like I would say that maybe I'm not as like technically fast or proficient as I was with Lucis. I could probably maybe still do it if I had the time to sit down and try and like get all those solos and riffs and stuff down. It's just a lot more stamina and technicality. But yeah, like Carter just I don't even know. The dude he's very, very creative, and some of the stuff he comes up with and is insane. And yeah, even stuff I'm a lot more used to the style now. There used to be stuff that I would hear on demos that he would send me, or he'd show me something that sounds a certain way, but it's like I don't understand how what you're playing and how your fingers are moving are making that noise. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. But now I'm a lot more familiar with it, and even with being familiar with it, I'm still like constantly confused by like how do you come up with this shit, dude? Like it's insane. Yeah, he's very, very proficient with coming up with insane chord shapes and little intricacies like within riffs and stuff and different time signatures. Like a lot of the stuff that we're working on for like the new set of songs, there's a lot of stuff that is like it's still technically quote unquote a 4/4 thing. Like you can it'll make sense, but it's not in 4/4. And I'm like, I don't know how you come up with this crap, dude. Like it's nuts. He'll argue like if he was here right now, he'd be like, "No, I'm not that good, man." It's like no. He's a very talented individual and an insane musician, and he's definitely in a lot of ways like he's made me a better guitar player and musician, and I look at things from a different perspective now. Having worked with him on stuff, dude's a beast. In short,
Well, and that kind of tells me, too. It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, he's one. Anytime I've ever talked to him, he's such a humble guy.
yeah, yeah,
But talking about making you a better guitar player, I mean, that's what you want out of anything you're going to invest your time in, especially in regards
yeah.
to people. If you're investing your time in people, you want people around you that are going to make you better. And so
Yeah.
that kind of speaks to where his his priorities, and even with being in a band and wanting
Mhm.
the end product to be exactly what you want it to be, lifting other people up along the way.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say I do this. I say the same about with Mitch and Cody playing with them and stuff. They just the stuff that they would come up with at times. Like, I mean, if you're learning something new, regardless of how like quote unquote simple it is, it's still you're learning something that you're not used to doing. And there's a lot of intricacies within riffs, like with Phantom Sun. Like half of that song was written by Mitch and Cody, and there were parts in that I just didn't. If you listen to it, you're like, that's not difficult to get down, but it was something that I wasn't used to doing. And I'm like, I never would have thought about doing something like that, like over this.
I remember when you guys started playing Phantom Sun live, that was definitely like a different aesthetic for you guys than
Yeah.
anything is. I mean, it's, not like it's worlds apart from To the Depths material, but a little bit more like ambiance, I guess you would say, to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it sounded yeah, more it just was a bigger type of sound, really. And
Yeah, more open. Well, that
yeah.
chorus is super
Yeah.
just like wide open with the little clean picked parts,
Yeah, I mean, and
which
that
was your big contribution you made, and that octave part on the chorus as well, which just
yeah.
yeah, it's a cool tune.
Yeah, and that's yeah, that's not it's a good tune. But I mean, yeah, even like that's like half half that song was written by Mitch and Cody, and like the little I guess it's not technically off time, but like the weird like chugged midsection that's like kind of off time from like what you would normally do. Like I remember when I first heard that, like even as like it's simple now and I get it, but at the time I was like I don't know what the hell you guys are doing. Like it doesn't make any sense. And it took me a little bit to get that down, and like that. I mean, even something like that, it's like that's not something I would have made. That's not something that I would have come up with, and that in itself, like there's lots of parts like that throughout Gehenna Gate and throughout like Effigy of Nightmares, where stuff that I wouldn't have come up with and stuff that I wouldn't have thought about in certain ways or transitioned into, like other people like pushed me to think a little bit differently or do something I wasn't entirely comfortable with. And that in itself, you know, adds to building as a musician. And that's why, yeah, I mean, like one man things and stuff are cool, but like that's why like being in a band with a bunch of people that you're comfortable with is like super important. Is you're a, and that's why I like the collaborative effort. Is there's always going to be something that, because I get stuck in my own things all the time where I'm like, oh, this is the, you know, I do this 4 times and I do this twice and then I do this again and then, but like having other people there to throw out ideas and push things is going to make you think in a different way and do things in a different way, and that in itself is still growing and learning. And I wouldn't be like where I'm at if it wasn't for Mitch and Cody or Carter, Ryan, and James and all the crazy stuff that they make. And even this with like Nogothula and stuff, like some of the stuff that Eric writes is like so, like he'll write something that's like super simple, but it sounds awesome. And I'm like, I never would have come up with that because my brain doesn't comprehend using 3 notes in different like shapes and stuff and just going back to those. I'm like, I always like try to build and do more, but like that's a perfect example of like when doing less is more.
Sure. Has that been kind of refreshing in a way?
I mean, yes and no, but that's like another, you know, that blows my mind half the time where I'm just like, this sound like, he'll show me something. I'll be like, well, what about that? And I'm like, that, I mean, that sounds kind of cool, I guess, but it's just like, it looks stupid. Like it looks simple. And then you just put it over a drum track and you're like, no, that's awesome. But again, that's something that I wouldn't have come up with myself because I'm like, I overthink things all the time. I'm like, is it too technical? Is it too melodic? Is it too brutal? Is it too simple? And so it's good to have other people there to straighten you out when you're doing that, because that's me with everything. And that's probably why the writing process for a lot of the Lucis stuff was so, I mean, the songs turned out fantastic. It's also why it took forever. It was constant like questioning everything. Like, does this work? Does this not work? And I take the blame on a lot of that because I overthink a lot of the stuff musically.
We labored.
Yeah,
But it created the product, you know, that you guys ended up coming out with. And I think that that's one thing that makes people that are aware of Lucis such avid fans when they hear the band, is because it's presented in this like bigger format of, you know, it's got speed, it's thrash, it's got hooks, you know, and you get people in, and then but you guys are constantly like doing unexpected things, you know, like it's not just like cookie cutter kind of thrash, and so that tickles a part of people that are looking for a little
yeah.
bit more.
Well, that's
You know,
good. I'm
they get
glad. I'm
enticed
glad
by
that
the
you think
speed.
that. I'm glad you think that. I mean, that was kind of our thing. Like we were constantly like, does this sound like something else? Does this sound like it? You know, could be like another band do this and stuff. And
Yeah, and we would there were unwritten rules even when we were prepping for the album. I remember like you know there's a level of the writing where we would, you know, write riffs that just come into your head and you think, oh, this sounds cool, I'm going to put it down. But we were always conscious as well of like, you don't we did never wanted to put out, especially if you're listening to the album, like let's say 3 tracks in a row that are like all thrash like level speed tracks. And even if we were to do that, usually there'd be which I don't think there might be like two or three. I'd have to go listen to the album, but it was pretty conscious of like, we're gonna have a song if it's at 205 BPM. The next song might be like a swing time track, and then the one after that might be thrash again, but at a different BPM. And it wasn't like a conscious thing we would do when writing, like, okay, well, we have these 3 thrash songs, so now we have to make a song that. It was always more of, there were just, for one, because even just thinking of it, I'm like, gosh, I'm trying to remember like what one about how he would choose to write things. And because I'm just thinking of sitting and practicing. And I know that for me personally, it was, sometimes it's just easier if you're not warmed up to like play swing time. And then if you can't, switching from trying to play like a swing time song in 160 BPM or 145 BPM brings out certain ideas and riffs. And if if that starts to get kind of old, or if you're having trouble, you can switch to a different song that we were working on to like a faster track. And then you kind of get put into a different mindset because of the speed of it. And so with Lucis, even within the songs themselves, it was like we liked to, well, and Colton, you said it earlier, like to make them dynamic, to make kind of cool, unexpected things happen. And I think it maybe was because we just, gosh, I don't know, like we just it felt like it was boring maybe if we were to do the same thing for the whole song, which is, like there's Sodom tracks that are almost exclusively the thrash beat the entire song, and I enjoy them. And it's like, man, this is a
Yeah.
really good song when you're listening to someone else do it. But I think for us, when we were playing it, it was just like, and probably especially for Cody, like the last thing he wants to do is just play a thrash beat for an entire like
Yeah.
3.5 minutes. But I don't know, some of the stuff I think was conscious, and some of it was just kind of just, I don't know what the word is.
Like a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were keeping your palates clean. I mean, that's how I feel as a listener, anyways. When things are varied and unexpected things happen, it makes the parts that are a little bit more predictable. You're more like typical thrash elements. It makes them hit that much harder.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I could like segue that into a whole thing about the modern state of death metal, but I'm not going to do that.
You
Oh,
can
you're
if you
gonna do
want.
it. You're doing it.
I'm good. I'm good. But yeah, I mean that I agree. Like it's cause like Mitch said, I love there are specific like Dark Angels Time Does Not Heal. It's probably one of my favorite thrash albums. But the whole damn time it's just it's mainly a thrash beat the majority of the time. But the riffs are amazing. But that's also something that I don't really want to do entirely is like 4 minutes of thrash. It's fine in aspects. Like I think like Devoid is pretty relentless for the first like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we switch it around entirely where it just, there's acoustic passages and cool build up and it's atmospheric. And I think it's important. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just. I'm sure there are people who prefer the more straightforward stuff, but it's not something that I'm super into. I can't. It's hard for me to get into an album that is the same thing over and over and over again. And even the albums like Dark Angels Time Does Not Heal, where it is like fairly thrashy the majority of the time, it's still varied even when the drums don't change very often. It's still doing other things other than just straight tremolo. It's just I like things that vary and it, shit that takes you a bit on of an adventure and stuff that doesn't fit any certain like shtick. It doesn't. It just goes everywhere.
Well, as somebody that's listened to you guys and obviously, has known you guys for a while, but being a fan of the music, I think that that's one thing that makes the music a little, special for me is that, you guys always continued to kind of grow and evolve and play what you liked, play what you felt like playing. You guys are people with the musical ability and you probably could have made something a little bit more commercial, and maybe found a little more notoriety for yourselves. But the music speaks for itself. And anybody, that I am aware that I know, that's heard your band is like, whoa, just it speaks from it speaks from a different place than a lot of like the thrash music that you hear, say, on the top Spotify playlists or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
well,
I
I
really
appreciate that,
appreciate
man.
that. Yeah. I think it's really cool knowing that people responded so well to the music, to both of the EP and the album, because I think it was kind of created when I'm sitting here listening to, like when Colton's just now talking about the kind of the way that certain bands or albums genre can kind of be like, I don't want to say static, but not as amorphous maybe as, or broad as certain other bands. Like, I mean, maybe Dissection's a good example, right? Like you can't really call them like a straight one thing. Melodic death metal, black metal, what do you want to call them? And those kind of bands, granted, it speaks to a certain, like, some people are just going to draw things from that, and that kind of music is only going to, like, that specific type of music is going to be the only thing that can sort of do that for you. Just like listening to a Motorhead song has its own feeling that it invokes or convokes in people when they listen to it, right? That's completely different from going off and listening to like a Morbid Angel album, right? Like everything kind of has its own place, and because music's so subjective, it's kind of awesome that like it just feels good whenever you put a lot of yourself into something and then that people can take something away from that, like regardless of popularity or notoriety or whatever you want to use to define success of a band. I think as a musician and an artist, like one of the best things that you can have happen is one, just the actual process of creating the art is so rewarding. But then whenever it's received by others and they too draw something that's completely personal and unique to them, it's super awesome, really humbling. It's cool.
Yeah,
It
I
makes you
agree
feel good.
completely.
So thanks, Will. I know our band's amazing. We are super awesome. We play guitar a ton, and Colton shreds better than any human on the planet. So thanks.
No.
Thanks for digging on the band, man.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've really enjoyed watching you guys progress as players and musicians, over the years, and I really enjoy your bands. Colton, I think that it's pretty cool to see your evolution, going and being in another band, like Valdrin, who is also like rewarding in a very similar way to Lucius, but being something that's like totally different.
Yeah.
A lot of people would not even want to try and take that on, really. I mean, Valdrin's kind of an intimidating band when you see them play. You know what I mean? As far as like what they're doing and whatnot. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily, even if they thought about wanting to like, damn, that would be cool to play with that band, but many people wouldn't put themselves out there like that.
I mean, I feel like if I had a better understanding of guitar playing at the time and actually had just the slightest understanding of what he was doing, I wouldn't have. Because I guess how I interpreted how it sounded, when I listened to the album, as opposed to like what I knew about guitar playing at the time, I was like, oh yeah, it's not that hard. That can't be that difficult. I just want to learn how to do it. And it's a lot more weird and out there than I was expecting. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. I'm happy that I did it. I'm glad that I get to be a part of it, and I'm excited for the future of it. And yeah, I'm excited in general. I just want to see, especially with all the whatever happens in the future with this next go around of stuff. I'm excited to see how people take it.
What do you have on the horizon that has been announced in regards to new releases, and how many shows do you have coming up? Because I know that I've been seeing a lot of flyers crop up with stuff that you've got going on.
I got a show on June 3rd with Craven Idol and Berater. And Borberopsis, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm hoping that's correct.
And that's at the Mockbee, correct?
Dude, I don't even know at this point. It's changed venues like 5 times, but it's somewhere in Cincinnati. So it's who knows?
Just look on Facebook.
Yeah,
You guys
exactly.
will find
They'll
it.
probably update the event page. I'm not sure where it's at right now, to be completely honest. They keep changing it. But I got that. I got the tour with Well of Night, which I guess isn't. I mean, if you want to make fun of us for calling it a tour, it's 5 dates, but whatever. Like, it's a tour to me.
No, yeah, and Well of Night is an excellent band.
Oh, they're fantastic.
That's
I love them. I love them.
That's a great pair, and especially like because you guys are both black metal, but you're definitely not really like that similar as far as playing styles.
I know. I love it. They're probably more technical than we are in certain senses, but yeah, like they're fantastic, and I just like how they're such good musicians.
They're like technical, but then they have those like really heavy, slow, doomy parts too.
I know. I love it. Man. They're so good. I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to play with them for 5 days in a row. I'm going to be excited to see that, and I'd like to pick their brain about how they write stuff and guitar, jazz, and all that fun stuff. And who knows? Like, I'm excited to see what they do in the future as well. Yeah, they blow me away every time I see them. They're super duper tight, and like watching both Max and Ethan play guitar is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's quite a pair as well.
Yeah. I don't know if I have shows after that that I'm allowed to say things about. So yeah.
We definitely wouldn't want you to, put something out there that maybe you weren't supposed to. But
But yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know when this goes live, so I don't know if I can talk about certain things, and we'll see what happens. But
cool.
yeah,
Is because of course the Nogothula release is. Are you allowed to tell us if Nogothula is already writing new music? What about Valdrin?
yeah. There's new music all around. Nagathio's working on new stuff. I don't know if certain things have been announced yet. I don't, maybe not, but yeah. So we're working on new songs. We have a couple that are pretty much done, and then we have several other just big chunks of stuff.
Sure.
So I'm excited. That'll be cool to see where that goes. And then yeah, with Valdrin, pretty much we just got we have some kinks that we need to iron out and get everything 100%. We'll probably be recording in the next few months.
That's awesome news.
Hey,
Yeah, so hopefully by next year that'll be out. Yeah, I'm very 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 excited and nervous. Honestly, I don't know how it's going to be taken, but I'm excited regardless.
Yeah, Valdrin seems like a band where that band has always had no shortage of material. So that's definitely nice. Getting I mean, over the last like 5 to 6 years, really, since Beyond the Forest came out, but especially with Two Carrion Talismans and Effigy being released so close to each other, there hasn't been a super long lull in music in a while, which is awesome because when the music
Yeah.
rules, I mean, it's like you've got new kick-ass stuff, for people to get. It's been like what, about a year and a half since Effigy came out.
Yeah, Effigy was June something of 2020. So yeah, it's been a couple years.
Oh wow, yeah, we're almost
Yeah,
exactly at 2 years for
I know
Effigy.
it's weird.
that is
That's
yeah,
so
that's
wild.
crazy.
It's really weird. Yeah, but yeah, it'll be exciting. I was nervous with Effigy because it was my first thing, with them, and I wasn't sure how that was gonna happen because like if what if it sucked and then everyone would be like they would blame the new guy, like so. But I'm glad that happened to do well, and
Well, it was kind of different in its own way, and you said the new material is going to be different a little bit in its own way,
oh, dude,
and you
yeah,
guys
that's
kind of.
that's my favorite part about Valdrin. Really, is every album is like it's Valdrin. It's always going to be Valdrin, but it's such a different approach to things. I would say this new stuff is more in the vein of Beyond the Forest, but it's still not. It doesn't sound like it at all.
Obviously, that's the first album that anybody that's found Valdrin really, that's where you start with the band,
Yeah,
and so obviously that's kind of the quintessential album, and people want it to be that or whatever.
exactly.
But I
Everyone's
think
like
I
the
think the
first
fun part
album is
about
the best
Valdrin,
one.
sure, but you guys have a central storyline, and no chapter in a story is the same. No character or storyline is the same as another. And so obviously, I think that part of the variance of the music, you guys have it's a cohesion between story and music,
Yes.
and it's unlike a lot of bands, or really very many bands, anyways.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, and, like I'm glad that you picked up on that because the first album follows the I guess protagonist who is his name is the name of the band, so Valdrin. And then with Two Carrion Talismans and Effigy of Nightmares, they follow the antagonist, who's Next Animus, I think is how you pronounce it, and that's why those albums are a little bit more like dirty and evil sounding. And then this next go round, it does follow the protagonist again, so it takes place like right after BTF in the story, and so it's more
So
back
it's going to be picking
into
back up a little bit in the central storyline a little bit more.
yes. So it'll pick up the storyline there, and it's more in the vein of just big epic songs. It's a little bit more melodic, and there's some stuff on there that is a little bit different, but I guess there's a little bit of that on every album. So yeah, it's definitely expanding a lot of things that we had done musically in the past to just a greater amount. It's a big one. It's a big album, so it'll be interesting to hear it like recorded and everything, and see how people see how people take it in because
What are we looking at here?
it's a lot.
16 tracks, dual album, 85 minutes. What are
No,
we?
dude, I'm not gonna lie. That is something that I'm pretty sure that I have brought up to them before, but um, they I don't think that that's something they would ever go for. But I guess it's not a big deal. Like if I say like what's going on, say they can spank me later. It's fine. It's I want to say it's 11 tracks. 10 are actual like songs, like songs, and then one's an instrumental.
Oh, cool.
And
Juicy.
it's 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 pretty long. It's definitely a little bit over an hour. So
Oh wow, nice.
yeah,
Yes.
it's a big boy, and it's very dynamic. It's got bits of chunks of everything. It's hella evil and brutal parts, and we're doing some stuff that we've never done before on it. And yeah, it's a big undertaking. These songs are fairly difficult, and we're trying to get them down as quickly as we can before the recording and stuff. So yeah, we'll probably start recording drums in the next few months, and then we just got to iron out some stuff before then. And yeah, it's
Well, it
gonna be
sounds like there's a lot to
it's
look forward to.
I would hope so. It's I'm proud of it. I'm just nervous in general about like new stuff, but I'm very excited to see what happens. And
I think that it's. I mean, everything. I mean, I've been a fan of Valdrin since Beyond the Forest and watching the evolution. Not just, I mean, obviously knowing everybody in the band and hanging out with Ryan, James, and Carter in those early days, like being a fan of them as people. But every record has been quality in my book, and they all have something different elements to be appreciated, I suppose. And I think it's kind of one of those things where I would expect whatever the new album is, like any of the familiarities will be exciting. The new stuff you're talking about will be exciting. In general, just new music from Valdrin's. I could probably speak for any fan or all fans of Valdrin that it's always a treat when it comes out. Because I'm sure there's plenty of avid fans that have already, played the crap out of the prior three. And it's also sweet knowing it's going to be potentially pretty long because
yeah,
Effigies was it's a phenomenal record, but if it's almost like it's there's a one of the benefits of its length is that you can just re-listen to it over and over and over very very easily and quickly
yeah, yeah,
because it
exactly.
leaves you wanting more. And so I think that it's almost like the perfect sort of tease into whatever you guys are about to do next.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It is a little weird. I guess calling that an album, quote
Or
unquote.
yeah, I guess I mean
Um,
EP. Yeah, my
yeah.
bad.
Well, I mean, it is an album. I guess it's just it is short, but I guess it fits the technical term of what an EP is. It's like over 25 minutes, and I mean, Rain and Blood's 28 minutes. And that's an album, but it has like
10.
10 tracks on it or
Yeah,
something. So that one just had what, five.
5
I don't even
actual
know.
songs.
I don't even know my own band. I want to say five or six. There's six. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one the
Yeah,
instrumental.
yeah. But yeah. I think it will sate the palates of a lot of people that are wanting that more like epic medieval sound that maybe wasn't as treaded enough on the other two for them anyway, and at the same time like make up for how short Effigy was, which I wasn't a big deal. I think that album is perfect the way it is, and I don't. It's hard to really think about like what else could have been added to that. I mean, I'm sure we could have figured something out, but yeah, that album, very proud of it. Very, very consistent, and it's super duper evil. And yeah, I
Without
think
having heard any of the new album, I've got to suppose that once I listen to that, it's going to help Effigy fall into its place amongst the discography a little better.
uh,
With this being a little bit longer release with a little bit different musical direction, I think maybe that might be an album that people appreciate a little bit farther after the fact too.
yeah, I would say like maybe from I don't know. It's weird because every album is so different than the other. It just depends really on I guess what you're in the mood for. I don't know. Maybe Mitch, you are, but I like to not comparing. I'm not saying that we're as good as this band at all, but like when you listen to a band like Bluthaus Nord, every album is very different, and they'll do things where it's like, oh, this is like normal, like just cold black metal stuff, and this is more medieval, and then this one is super dissonant, and we'll do like 2 albums of just like insanely heavy, crazy noise stuff, and then go back into like melodic black metal. And with that band, like you never know what you're going to get, and that's why it's interesting to listen to his releases like over and over again, because it's like you never know what's going to happen. Is it going to be super duper heavy? Is it going to be super duper melodic? Is it going to be some crazy atmospheric thing? And with Valdrin, it's kind of the same thing. Because BTF is very, I would say, more straightforward in the vein of like, the like 90s like black metal stuff, like Dissection and Unanimated and things of that sort. And TCT is more injected in the vein of like there's some death metal influence in it. It's more Immortal type, like pure Holocaust type riffing, and then but that it has a lot of like crazy atmospheric stuff and some prog type riffs in it, and then Effigy I would consider more in the vein of like, I guess, Americanized black metal, but it still has hints of like all the stuff from Europe, where it's just super emotional and dark and insane sounding. So this, it entirely depends on the listener, and that maybe that's going to be our downfall in the long run, of like, well, no album like has like a consistent sound, from one album to the next, which I don't have a problem with personally. I think that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, like maybe this next album will let people, or have people that were fans of Effigy or fans of TCT, maybe they'll listen to that and be like, oh, I like these more, and maybe they'll go back to those a little bit more than they have. I don't know. Like I never know how people are going to take anything. Uh,
Sure.
so yeah, but who
Well, I
knows?
think especially, with the variation between your albums and whatnot, it's pretty obvious that Valdrin is going to write what they want to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, I think that, people that are really into your music, and again, you put out a record and try to sell it, so obviously, you want people to like it. But at the same time, some people are listening for music that they already like, kind of in a sense, like they have a sound that they like.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
with a band that's as diverse as Valdrin is, I mean, you're just not going to fit into anybody's cookie cutter or all the time.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I think that's great. I mean,
Especially in underground music, that's not even unexpected.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, the Chasm is a good example of that. Like, none of their stuff really is similar,
Sure.
from album to album. And I guess they're still pretty underground, which is unfortunate because they're fantastic. But yeah, they don't have like a, straight thing where you could just like, hey, this is what it sounds like, because every album is a little bit different in some regard.
It's actually a pretty good comparison. I'm sitting here thinking that, and even, man, that's a really great comparison. Even though Valdrin and Chasm don't sound the same,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of like, and I'm not as well versed on the name of every single one of their records, but that the one that, and coincidentally, actually, Carter had shown me the Chasm. He was the first person that introduced me to them back when we were hanging out at the Weird House, I believe was the name
Yeah.
of that place that him, James, and Ryan had. Gosh, and why am I? It's like a purple record.
A Spell of Retribution.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one I first kind of like gravitated towards because, well, the production was a little cleaner and it's pretty melodic. And then you go back to some of their earlier stuff; it's a little dirtier,
Mm.
but the DNA is still there, I suppose, right? Which is
Yeah.
what I think is the same can be said for Valdrin, even though there's obvious differences between each record. There's still that sort of Valdrin DNA where you can hear it. Like, I think most people would probably hear a Valdrin track that they haven't heard before if they're familiar with some of the other work, and probably be able to be like, oh, is this a Valdrin song? Like, is
Yeah.
this Valdrin? Or because there are little things about the way that the band sounds that is like a nice identifier, or is easy to, gosh, I don't know what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of originality to it, despite the fact that it, like you said, there's kind of a blending of different influences that can be identified on each record, perhaps. But and even then, whatever you guys are listening to and thinking is going into the music isn't always going to be what And this is for all bands, right? Like the
Yeah.
people that listen are going to take something different away from what they're hearing, to where one listener to another, it might be like, that's kind of like, are you, I think once we played, and I'm only using this because it's an example I can think of. We played like an early show as Gamora, and somebody was like, "Oh, Opeth," and we're like, "Wait, what?" Like, there's like nothing Opeth in my mind
Yeah.
about what we were doing, but subjectively, some people are just going to take different things away. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Long-winded. I'm rambling, but yeah, great point.
Oh, that's
Chasm,
fine. That's
Valdrin,
that's
parallel.
me speaking in general. So
Colton, I want to know what you think a little bit about like compare and contrast what it's like to play shows with the different bands that you like between playing shows with Lucius and Valdrin.
oh, the difference is night and day. I can tell you that. I don't like Lucis was, you have to sing and play shit at the same time. No, yeah, it's night and day. Like being able to play guitar and then doing, a handful of vocals just as a backing thing is a lot less stressful than, you know, being the main focus of everything and playing guitar and singing at the same time. Yeah, it's Valdrin's easier from a technical standpoint to be able to pull off live. Lucis was a lot more of a challenge, but I miss it sometimes. Honestly, I do miss it. It was a lot of fun. Lucis was more difficult to answer your question. Yes, like Valdrin's a lot easier to.
I'm sure that it's rewarding in like two different kinds of ways. Having
Yeah,
the experiences of playing live with both those bands.
yeah, it
Like you
is
said with Valdrin, you're a little bit more free to kind of just be in the moment a little bit more than when you're trying to obviously do two things at once.
exactly.
But I've seen you enough times with Lucius. I wouldn't even want to try and count how many times, but I've seen you do that enough, where I can tell that you really enjoy the microphone as well. And some of those moments, like when the music, and because with Lucius, a lot of the time, like the climax of the vocals and the song will coincide, in some of the more anthemic songs that
Oh,
you guys have. And like when that moment hits and you like just really own that microphone at the same time that you're shredding people's faces off, I can see that you really enjoy it.
oh, that's cool. Well, thanks, man. I'm glad that you like picked up on that. Yeah, I mean, this I guess it goes hand in hand with the music as well as like when I would write vocals is like the transitions and stuff are important. So I want the vocals to match like the energy of the song or like be able to like push it to the next part and stuff. So yeah, like obviously, um, I guess because of that and it's my lyrics and stuff that I guess like there's the sense of like I feel them a little bit more. So maybe that's it. Um, it's hard to like really I guess say that within the without being in the moment, but yeah, I'm sure that's a possibility. Definitely is that the lyrics coinciding with the lyrics or the lyrics coinciding with the music, and that also affects the actual execution of what I'm doing. And yeah, like I would agree with that.
You're somebody that, as far as like vocal performance, I've always really enjoyed, because with your vocal style, I can actually like tell what you're saying most of the time.
Yeah, that's
Especially
cool.
if and you have listened to the songs a few times, at first anyways, and then
Yeah,
I can actually like hear what's going on with the lyrics and whatnot in a live performance. A lot of the time with extreme metal, that's kind of an afterthought.
yeah.
Like if you're
And
really into a band and you know the lyrics, then you kind of know what's then you know what you're
yeah,
looking for. But for like a new listener, you would have no clue.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And yeah, you're definitely right about the lyrics, I guess, being more of an afterthought as opposed to being more of a focus, I suppose. And that's not always a bad thing, really. Like, the vocals add regardless. But yeah, I don't know. I like writing meaningful like type stuff or introspective stuff. And then
Dude,
when it
one of
comes
my
to the
favorite
actual,
songs by you guys is a really unexpected one on Gehenna Gate, which was From Dust. And I think I've told you this
yeah,
before, but like some of those
yeah,
long screams that you do, I'm just like, oh, yeah.
yeah, that's probably I would say that and that Oculus and Gehenna. are probably my favorite, like from a lyrical standpoint and like the execution of the vocals and stuff. Yeah, I like those songs like a lot. That's a it's a good tune, good tune,
For sure.
and I like it. It is very different compared to the rest of the album. I think that's why, because I think, I mean, I was even weirded out by it. I liked it a lot, but I was like, this is weird. And I remember like showing it to Mitch and Cody, and like, I'm sure to an extent they liked it, but they were just like, this is like really, really different.
Yeah, I just liked how heavy the main riff was, honestly, because
Yeah.
that intro kind of sets it up a certain way, and then you've got that crushing main riff. My only, well, and to any that don't know, Colton wrote that whole entire song. But he just showed up one day and was like, "Here you go, bloop," entire track just like written, done, finito.
Yeah.
And it was like, damn, dude, this is super cool. But yeah, it's definitely a departure from anything else that was on the record, and it's a shame
Yeah.
that we never played it live. Honestly, I know we tried. It was just getting. It was never one of our tighter songs we practiced.
Yeah. Which is weird because it's probably the simplest song in the album.
Yeah, it's just my left hand, it sucked on that doing that intro. I would have botched it up. We probably could
No,
have pulled it off.
yeah, we could have pulled it off.
But I'm with you. Well, that song's I really enjoyed that one as well.
Yeah.
The lyrics are cool. And don't you do cleans on that one, don't you? Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of. I mean, they're technically clean. I don't know if I pulled it off, but they're clean vocals. There's like what is it? There's like 2 songs that have cleans on it. I don't remember, but yeah, I guess that was something else. I was trying to do something a little bit different than we had done in the past. So yeah,
Yeah, you had a part on Oculus where right before the solos, I believe.
yeah, that sounds about right. No, it was not the Oculus. It was Devoid. That's what it was.
I thought it was on a. I could have swore.
Is
Well,
there cleans on Oculus? I don't remember.
yeah, your vocals are like something, 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 and breathe, and then it goes into the little it goes into like a little run up before the solo.
Oh, that's Ethereal. I'm sorry.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
God, I don't even. Yeah, we're
Look at
bad.
us. Jesus.
Old.
Yes, old indeed. Okay. So I was just misremembering. They're both kind of swingy tracks, all right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
For sure. I think again, it's like something that was kind of tasteful. And From Dust, that's a different kind of song anyways. So why
yeah,
not throw another like kind of element in there? And it works perfectly, like especially the second time around whenever you pitch match that little when you go back into the intro part to close out the song.
yeah.
And I'm just like, ooh, yeah, okay, that works in like such a different way than anything else about Lucis works.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you feel that way, man. That was definitely one of the few that I didn't think that was kind of on there for the sake of we like this song. I don't really care if anybody else did or not, but
But
yeah, it's
once
cool.
again, you have that kind of like wonder whenever you put it out there. You're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely, like when I first listened to the album and heard that track, it was definitely like a whoa kind of moment because it was just not totally expected.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it, dude. That's awesome. Yeah. Just thanks.
I gotta ask you, man. When you came, so you guys moved out here in 2012, was that correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Me and Cody moved out in January. I think you and John arrived in April of 2012.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. So you have recorded 4 releases with 2 different now 3 different bands. And you're working on recording again. Like, is that something like, did you think that would be something that happened? Did you really like have those kind of thoughts when you moved out here? Or were you just kind of like more just throwing shit to the wind, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, it's hard to think about my mindset back then, other than just being clueless and being like, oh, this is fun. This is cool. And that's about it. Yeah. It's, had I been maybe more intelligent, I would have probably not thought about just going somewhere with one, not having any money to begin with, and then going somewhere using the money that I had to come somewhere to not have any money to begin with to just play music for the sake of playing music. But I'm glad that I did, and obviously I'm where I'm at like now. Still poor, but I'm making music. That's fun.
Yeah, man, and you've been on a number of very well received and well thought of albums. You've played a lot of shows, and I mean, I know that that's something that like just from having personal conversations with you guys. Like, obviously, you wanted to further your band and whatnot when you moved here, but I don't know that you would have expected to record on 4 different releases and then wind up being
No.
in another band, such as Valdrin.
Yeah, no, I don't. That it was all just kind of just took it as it came. Really, there wasn't really any intention of trying to do anything more than what we were already doing. And like now, I just kind of make jokes about. I was like, well, my goal in life is to just have a very extensive metal archives profile, and that's about it. It's like this guy was on 27 different things with 25 different bands. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. Whether it sucks or not, it is what it is. But yeah,
Dude, I think that that's rewarding in a different kind of way. You're more likely to make a lot more cool memories living like that than to try and like specifically try and gain some kind of commercial success in the music industry.
oh yeah, I mean,
With
especially with the
music that's fairly niche anyways.
exactly, it's kind of a. I mean, it's not an out of the realm possibility, obviously, because there's lots of bands right now that I would are doing fairly well. I would assume, like, I mean, Blood Incantation is probably one of the biggest underground bands right now, and I'm sure that they're doing just fine. They have their side projects and stuff. I Sangui Sugabog, Undeath, 200 Stab Wounds. They seem to be kind of exploding and doing super duper well. So, I mean, it's not an out of the realm of possibility thing, but it's definitely, I would assume, even if you talk to those guys, that it's not, oh, excuse me, not something that was expected, and nor really should it. If your whole thing is like, I want to be successful, it's just like, well, I don't know. I just do it because I like it, and if people happen to like it, then sweet.
Well, and I think that's why you have seen some, relative success, with as far as the bands that you've played with, and because you were more interested in advancing yourself as a musician and writing shit that you like. And I think that
Yeah.
that's true in almost anything you do. If you're doing it for the right reasons, you're more likely to see fruits of labors that you are able to relate to.
Yeah, I agree completely. And yeah, I mean, I like, I just had a conversation with Carter yesterday about this stuff where we were just kind of talking about like our mental attitude and like the mundaneness of everyday life and stuff, and how it's easy to get caught up in that than what is important and like what we enjoy and stuff. And yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, like, would it be awesome if like Valdrin was huge? Would it be awesome if Lucis had gotten like to a point of like being able to tour and play festivals and stuff? Like, yeah, obviously that would have been amazing. But it's also not what, like, that's not the reason that we, went out to do what we did. We just liked, at its core, we like playing music. We like just doing what we did. And that was just like work, growing as musicians and like releasing tunes and playing live and stuff. It was always a fun just escape from the everyday mundaneness of stuff. And I don't know, I feel like if your whole intention is to just write music for some sort of gain, like whether it's like monetization or to just get something in return, it's like I feel like you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I mean, no, disrespect to anyone who, like, that's literally why they do things, but it's like it doesn't seem genuine to me, really. It's like, oh, I just write this shit because it gives me, it gets me money or something. And it's like, okay, well, I guess, like, you do you, but I like just playing around on the guitar and writing stuff. And
Dude, I mean, I can attest to that. I'm sure
yeah.
Mitch remembers all too well too, because he lived with you at different points and whatnot. But I remember even as early as like the Kirksville days, like I don't remember what street that house was on.
Oh, you're talking about the rabbit
Washington.
hole.
Yeah,
The
Washington,
rabbit
Washington
hole. Oh
Street.
my god.
Well, that
Yeah.
one, and then even earlier than the Washington Street house, Colton, I think it was your apartment that was over there.
I don't remember
On
what street we were on, but I
the
know it.
by the Chinese restaurant and the theater, like by the square. Is that what you're talking about?
Just a few blocks away, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You were right
Yeah,
off Baltimore, I thought, or not Baltimore,
Something like Buchanan.
Illinois. Yeah,
Illinois. You were
Buchanan
right
Yeah,
off.
I
Street.
live right by Illinois. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going over to that place and hanging out, and it'd just be like, like the guys, just like bullshitting, and Colton would be just like kind of like standing in the background and like fucking around on his guitar or even air guitaring. You know what I mean? It was just like always on your mind. And I'm like, you don't
Nerd,
do that
dude.
unless you enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like, I mean, the thing to time, really, the things we put our time into doing, you know, is it's got to be what you care about. And you've put a lot of
Yeah.
time into your music and growing yourself as a musician, and I respect that.
Oh well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. There's, I mean, I feel like I can always do more. I could be better about a lot of things, and I could probably be more of a technical beast if I actually like put away, an hour or so to actually work on proper technique and stuff and grow in that case. But I'm happy with where I'm at the moment. There's definitely some stuff that I could definitely do to better myself in those regards. But yeah, I'm glad that you feel that, and I'm this is probably what I'm just gonna end up doing for a while. I don't feel like burnt out or anything, and I just enjoy doing it. Yeah, I don't know.
It seems like there's definitely some balance between your projects and whatnot. Or
Oh
do you
yeah,
care to do you care to talk about whether you will wind up recording any Lucis Absentia material
yeah.
again, or is that a taboo subject?
I was waiting on that question like literally like 20 minutes before we got on this. I'm like, I wonder if he's gonna bring that up because Mitch is on here. I'm
Well,
like,
obviously we can edit anything out, you know, that you
yeah,
want,
no.
but I had to
I
throw the
mean,
question out
I
there.
it can be discussed. It's not some. It isn't something that we haven't discussed. Like we've talked about it like every now and like probably every few months or so it gets brought up and we talk about it, and we'd like to do stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that even during the Gehenna recording and stuff like I I mean on my computer right now I'm sitting on a lot of demos and music and stuff that was never released that we were working on and that I've worked on over the years, and it gets brought up every now and then. So like, maybe one day at the very least there'll be a recording or something, or we'll put something out. I don't know about from a live perspective, like maybe as well, but there's nothing definitive at the moment. So it's just like it's a perpetual hiatus of maybes. Like
Right.
it might happen, it might not. It's
Well, definitely do whatever you have to do to protect the hard drive.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely.
It's like the holy grail, those new Lucis Absentia demos.
Yeah, no, I'll go back and listen to them every now and then. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's pretty cool stuff. I don't remember how to play any of it, but I could figure it out, I suppose. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. Give me a second. Let me pull this up.
Yeah, I've heard all of it through oh, even when I was in North Dakota, Colton was sending me Dropbox files of a bunch of stuff he was writing, and yeah, there's a lot to be mined there. It sounds
Yeah,
good.
I have 13 demos of just like there's certain songs that are actually named, and then there's just certain projects or like little things that if you open them up, there's like four different chunks of stuff for like a minute and a half, or yeah, it, there's lots of things that could eventually make its way to the internet, but
Well, thanks for being candid about it. I
yeah.
do appreciate that.
Oh, it's
I'm
fine. It's
sure
it's
there are
not it's not
lots
a
of people
secret. I
that
mean, I
will.
don't care.
Sure. I'm sure it's not an uncommon question when people see you around at shows every once in a while, you know?
That's true. Every now and then I'll get that. Like it's either you were in Gamora because they don't know how to pronounce the other name, or is this still a thing? And you guys, and it does a lot of people that don't know that Mitch is back. Like, so they'll be like,
Oh,
"Yeah, it sucks.
sure.
Mitch moved away, and we don't have new music from you guys." And I'm like, "No, he's been here since like for a
for like
while." And
for like
they're just like, "What?"
almost 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, is he gonna? You guys gonna do stuff? I'm like, I don't know. Like, he's he's busy, and we're all busy. We all have lives, and
yeah. We've
you
made
know,
because we have had times where we've met up and we just haven't had a consistent cadence, really, because lives are just a lot busier now. I mean, as you can imagine, having two kids
yeah,
it's a big priority. And kind
Yep.
of to Colton, your point, like you say, oh, I could put an hour away a day for you to get more technical on your instrument. It's sort of the same even for me now. Like I just don't play as much as I even close to as much as I did when we were writing all that stuff. Gehenna Into the Depths. Oh man, like I'm as rusty as all hell. Like it would take quite a bit of effort to get the chops back up. But the writing portion of things is still, I mean, that's easy enough to do. And even if it's bouncing ideas back and forth, which we have done a few times, admittedly, like even
Yep.
gotten together with Cody, which was cool. But yeah, there's nothing concrete or established of like hard dates. This is happening. This is happening. We've really just kind of felt stuff out and had some discussions and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, there was things like, and this is just my own brain of like giving me like deadlines, and I'd be like, well, like 2022, we'll put out something, but that it.
I think that anybody that knows you guys or is like pretty familiar with the band, owns any of the albums and seen some shows, is obviously aware of how dedicated and passionate about that band was whenever you guys were active with it. So I don't think that anybody would expect less from something in the future. And I don't think anybody that knows you guys would ever like rush you to release something. Like everybody understands what's been going on with you guys for the most part. And if we ever get Lucis tracks again, that'll be a great day. So I know I would be tickled silly.
Hell yeah.
When I listen to you guys now, I listen to you on YouTube so that I don't want to hurt my CDs, because some of those are starting to get older, to the
Yeah,
depths. And I'm like, man, because some of that stuff will never be reproduced. So
it's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I can't believe you don't still have a Blood of the Sands disc.
Oh, I did.
You
I
smashed
did.
it to
I
bits.
remember. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I destroyed it. Pretty sure that I got rid of the evidence
Yeah.
somehow.
Well, the evidence lives on with me, and I'm going to put it up on YouTube for everybody.
I remember the name of the Honking Kensington EP. I remember
What is it?
it was Epicness.
Oh my god!
Wasn't
You're
it?
right.
Epicness.
Oh my god!
And the EP of
You're
Epicness were
right.
like
Yeah, it was
capitalized.
Epicness EP. Yeah, it was
Epicness.
EP, like
Oh my
EP,
god,
like capital
Epicness.
EP,
That was the
ICNE.
title track. Was called Epicness, and it was to anyone who's never heard it, never
Oh,
will hear it.
lame.
It was the most epic song that
Yeah,
will never
exactly.
top it. It'll never be topped. We peaked, but that's why it's so hard to get a hold of it. Anyone that has it.
Yeah, it's not even on Discogs.
I mean,
is it even real then?
Who
no.
knows?
Well, it's any copies that exist are just like burnt discs from us, like burning it off iTunes.
Absolutely, that's exactly what you guys did. I think Mitch wrote every single name of the tracks on the front in marker, and then you guys dropped it off at the apartment that I was living in at the time.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
That sounds about
Yeah.
right.
Oh yeah.
DIY, man, isn't that stuff's cool?
that's wild. I still have like an original demo CD from the one Cancel the Search Party EP. It's pretty wild. I mean,
Was it which?
you
which
guys
group
were
of
talking
songs-
earlier, like at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about just like, how when you guys started out, you didn't know anything at all about recording or,
Yeah,
how to put together, like a release, how to cohesively put tracks together. And dude, I mean, we recorded that demo in a garage that was soundproofed with egg cartons.
My God.
And like
Cold.
Willie Newell was recording it, and he had never even recorded like a hard rock or metal band. And we were like obviously kind of like the punk metalcore kind of stuff. Yeah, it was just so funny like looking back on it now.
I mean, at least you were smart enough to somewhat soundproof the room with something. I mean, I don't think that we would have thought about that.
I mean, he recorded blues musicians and stuff in there, so it wasn't like he had never done that before, but just it was such a I don't want to say hillbilly, but it was definitely would be a Kirksville way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
What group of songs was that? Was that like the first stuff that you guys were doing, or like with the newer Jack?
I guess I would call it like the middle. We only ever really like played maybe like 10 or 11 different songs, but it would have been the ones that we played for the meat of the time we were playing shows with you guys. Towards the end, we had 3 new songs written, and we played them each live maybe once or twice. And those were my favorite songs that we ever played. But obviously, that was destined to.
You had a song about hunting that I enjoyed. I remember the title. It was a good one.
As do I.
Yeah, I think it was called Slut Hunting.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right. Yeah, we were not
Yeah.
gonna
there
say
it
it.
is.
Fine.
It's funny. I hadn't thought about that in years, probably,
I
but
still
I
remember the
still
first
remember
riff,
that
dude.
riff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ding,
I
ding,
still
ding, ding,
remember.
ding, 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 ding. It was something like that, and then there was like a little breakdown, and then you screamed something. I don't know what you were saying.
something about running. Something about running. I can't remember. I honestly
Yeah,
don't remember most of the lyrics. Most of the lyrics of that band were just like I was a pretty angry young man, to be honest. So a lot of it was just like letting out that aggression
oh
and
yeah,
whatnot.
metal's great for that. Just the release of energy, whether positive or negative, into the world.
I remember like one of the most rewarding things about being in that band because initially I just wanted it was really fun to get together and jam and play songs and yell at the microphone and stuff.
Hmm.
I remember about like year and a half into it, I really started focusing a little bit more on techniques and trying to be able to do different kinds of things on the mic, and that was definitely like around that time I would say that my part in the band definitely like cemented a little bit better with what we were doing musically because I just became aware
Yeah.
more of the music as a whole as opposed to just like waiting for a breakdown and yelling really hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I 100% know what you mean. I mean, I could draw a parallel to the guitar. I mean, as time goes on and you start thinking about structure and what the like what drums are doing, for example. I mean, I used to never listen to drums, even listening to other bands, and then over time, eventually, it's like you start paying attention to vocal cadences and melodies and what the drums are doing, like in cohesion with the guitars. I mean, I don't know. Just the longer you do it, like you said, your awareness just increases. It's still different for, I suppose, a vocalist because I can't remember. Do you ever play an instrument, or vocals were your own? I suppose you did play an instrument, vocals, but like a stringed instrument or anything?
No, I've never played a stringed instrument. I played the keyboard when I was younger, but
Okay,
never really focused on that once I was in high school.
gotcha. Okay, so you didn't have that like frame of reference going into that. Yeah, that's awesome.
No, not as much. I did. I sang in choir in high school for 3 years, so I definitely wasn't like new to the whole vocals thing, but it was obviously much different than singing predominantly like classical music,
Sure. Yeah.
you know. But it's funny because like some of the techniques are still the same, having breast support and things like that definitely integral whenever you're trying to push as big a sound as you're trying to with punk or metal. So
Yeah.
it was definitely advantageous. I'm above all like those. That was just like a really fun time getting to meet new people that were into the kind of thing that we were into, and even some that like weren't really. But it was just the shows that we had going on were different than
It
anything that was
was,
happening
yeah, it was like
around there at that time.
exciting events because it's not like there's a lot going on in Kirksville, Missouri, other than the movie theater and football games. So like
Right, for sure.
it gave people something cool to kind of go check out.
Especially having been in the city now for a number of years, it is such a mind bender to like think back to like just like some of the stuff that we did just to be able to play and just the differences, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the scene itself, like how different every band was because there wasn't really a scene. So,
Right.
I mean, that kind of helps with, I don't know, in my opinion, helps with maybe my or all of ours, like musical taste and being a little bit more open than other things. Because there was a lot of like, I mean, there was like, remember Black Bear, like
Oh
they
yeah.
were called, they
Yeah,
were like
dude.
blues rock type thing, and they would play shows with us.
Yeah.
Oh sure. Well, and Blaine even played the frontman of Black Bear even played with Gamora. That was right after you guys became Gamora, correct?
We weren't
Or
more
were you
till we
guys still
moved.
No,
haunting
that was
Kensington?
the harrowing.
The
Yeah.
harrowing.
Yeah, and yeah, he played bass and stuff. Like, yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, every show was a little bit different because I mean, even like Cancel the Search Party, you guys were different than us, and bands that we would get from out of town, like there would be like hardcore acts and they'd be like metalcore acts and weird like alternative stuff. Like, so it was always
Yeah, I remember going on like MySpace and Facebook and literally just looking for like any bands that were
yeah,
anything but like country or
Yeah.
pop,
Yeah.
and just like, hey, you guys want to play a show? Like, we're looking to put on, shows and maybe have somebody from out of town play.
Do you remember? So like, because and I've got to actually get off here pretty quickly, but do you guys? Did either of you get to see SO2?
No.
That name doesn't sound familiar to me.
Okay, so that would have been before your time, but like, because when we were playing, I would think the only I can think of three bands, right? Canceled Search Party, The Harrowing, and then Left Hand Black are like the three kind of harder bands that I remember being in Cincy, that or a Kirksville, right? I mean, am I missing? I
Hmm.
think I'd remember if there were more. There was just not a
Yeah.
lot
No,
going
that was
on.
pretty much it.
But earlier, whenever 2005 or six, 5 and 6, when me and Cody were playing. So I was a freshman. Cody's a eighth grader, and Kelly Howerton was a junior, and we were playing the Lake Effect, and we were playing. It was a similar thing. We played park shows. We would play in Kirksville if we could. We went to Quincy, Illinois once and played at a venue, and it was never for a lot of people. And we would just do handbills at gas stations and stuff, but it was fun. And there was a journal printing building show though. Like there was a guard, like an old guard in my mind of bands that were kind of active in Kirksville, that a lot of them were kind of like in college or high school still. So by the time we played Harrowing, Canceled the Search Party era, those bands had broken up because people had, either graduated college or high school and went off to do something else. Because SO2, which I'm surprised that you wouldn't remember, Will, but that had Yazan Smith was on guitar, Tanner Jones played rhythm guitar.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that I saw them play. I just did not remember the name of the
Oh, the
band, but they
name.
used to play up at that place where like Wrong Daddies is now. But you remember where they used to have, it was like an open mic night, but
Yeah.
like guys would come with their bands. Like I remember when Nathan Barry was jamming with Anthony Capuano, they would go play together up there, and like Tanner and Yazan. I remember Tanner and Yazan playing at, my freshman year, I would go to Guitar Club just to watch those guys play.
Oh, dude, we saw when we played. There was a Lake Effect show we played where there were two different bands we were like blown away by. One was SO2 because Yazan would do all the tapping, like lead guitar stuff, and Tanner had the long hair, was headbanging, and they kind of were playing semi rock stuff, rock metal ish things. Because Lake Effect really we didn't play like metal ish stuff; it was more like blues and punk infused. But then we saw, what was the name of the band? Dang it! Blaine was on drums. I can't remember off the top of my head who was
Are
playing
you talking
bass.
about like with Arlo? Or
No, it wasn't with Arlo. That would have been
that was Three Toed Sloth,
that's
wasn't it?
right. Which that was good, but that was with Arlo on drums, and then Blaine was on guitar. Right. This was with Michael Moore. Michael Moore played guitar, and Blaine was on drums. He was wearing a buckethead mask. And then I feel bad. I can't remember who was playing bass for him at the time, but they were like, Michael Moore at the time, he was,
He was a pretty good guitar player
yeah,
too.
he was a blues beast. I mean, he was like doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And we played with those two bands. And I remember just the fire, especially in Kelly, because he put so much time into his compositions. Seeing the skill of these guys technically was like pretty motivating for him, because we were playing in a vacuum just to get Kelly's his parents' house in the basement, because his dad had all that music equipment. We just practiced all the time, and we didn't. They're just it was curious, and now looking back at how, to your guys' point of a scene, how it's literally just like anyone who's a musician, basically, like you come into contact regardless of genre, because there's so little. There's not like established, like there's a metal scene. I mean, I'm sure it was like
Yeah.
what out there, like a country cover scene, probably.
I mean, that was based more around, I feel like, whatever was because there's only like two or three bars in town,
Yeah.
so it's kind of based around whatever's playing because people are mainly going for the alcohol,
Yeah. So you're
and
going to
then
be
the
playing
bands just book something that they think the people will like
play
so they
some
don't
Randy
leave.
Travis, Travis Tritt. Let's go, big dog. Yeah.
It's we definitely need to wind it up for Mitch here, but
Yep.
it's been really great having you guys on and just conversating and reminiscing about some things and picking brains about the band you guys were in. Colton, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
For anybody that's listening and still sticking around, you can follow his band Valdrin, I'm sure, on Bandcamp or Facebook. You guys are probably on Spotify too.
Yep. We're on
And
all
then
the
also
streaming things.
Nogothula. That is Nogothula, I believe.
Yes, that is also
And you
on
can
all the
find
streaming
them on all
things.
platforms as well. So definitely support his bands. And then also, if you're looking to get into some other stuff, Mitch and Colton's band, Lucis Absentia, you can still find on some of those platforms as well. So, and Mitch, thanks for your time and for coming on as well.
Of course.